Welcome to TEQ Shift Podcast. Today we have a very interesting conversation with Markus Sontheimer. Most CEOs and CIOs, they still treat IT like plumbing. But Markus, he used to do it as a competitive weapon in banking, logistics, facility management, and he invented the IT transformation framework. So it's a wheel with 8 spokes that turn legacy chaos and modernizes it into digital trust, digital new applications. Markus, he spent 25 years in 4 industries, turning IT into profit engines and as a CIO at Mercedes-Benz, sales or Deutsche Bank, group finance or DB Schenker, and most recently as group CIDO at ISS. So multiple CIO of the Year awards, board advisor and builder of a 8-dimension transformation wheel, a framework which is now copied across Europe. So when legacy systems stall billion-euro businesses, he's the guy to call and to make them fly. So, hey Markus, welcome. And I will start off with the direct question. Why do you think is tech belonging to the strategy table to the boardroom?
So first, thank you, Mark, for having me. And it's my heart and blood topic you're talking about. And to answer your question directly, I think if you think about technology as a domain and as a knowledge area, it is big, it's deep, it's wide. And, as you said, I spent now 30 years in tech, and you need to go through different steps to understand the mechanics and the complexity of a digital ecosystem of an enterprise, especially when it then is getting a multi-product or multi-service line business, which is run across Europe or across the world. So technology means if you want to run it properly, like everything, you need to understand what you're talking about. And that's why the answer for the future is a diverse board. And when I say diverse, I think diversity of minds, diversity of know-how. And, tech is not something a CEO can do in spare time. And I really think the same applies to other areas. The CFO is something you can't do in spare time. You need to understand the financials, you need to have your education, and you need to make up your experience in the professional life to be a good CFO as well. So that's why sometimes I'm really asking myself, why the hell do people not understand that you should have a tech guy on your table? Because the perspective from a technology guy, especially as well in a non-engineering company, it's even worse. It might be the only engineer in the board. And as we all know, engineers are just thinking different. And diversity of minds brings better results. That's why I think it's absolutely key to have somebody on board. Now, why do some CEOs don't do it? And that's really a difficult psychological question. Either some of them just don't like the topic because it's so complex, it costs money, and everybody has a history of not working projects. So I think it's wrong, I really do, because my lessons learned is always that you need to add to your teams people with know-how where you're not good in. Because what you know already, you don't need a second and a third me too person in the room. You need somebody who gives you additional sights on topics. So that's why I think it's fundamental, especially 2025, all what's going on, agenting AI on data as the oil of the business, and that goes from sales down to production, down to compliance. It's a complex beast.
So let's go back to DB Schenker 2012. It's like the 3rd largest logistics firm on the planet.
Yeah.
And when we talked about this information, you gave me the insights that there were 0 data scientists, there were 400 applications, there were 6 ERP stacks. Yeah, when the trucks left the yard, you couldn't see any one of them, or like someone, you were lost. So could you paint this scene? Like, why is this challenge, and where do you see the pattern?
It all starts with the question as a CEO and as a board, how do you run the business? in Schenker, it was as well a very kind of decentralized business with a decentralized P&L. So every country had its P&L. The land guy had its P&L in the country. So you're just trying to achieve your P&L. And that means when you do a flight, you do kind of ship and forget. So you don't care about the receiver side, and you just make sure you have enough on your side of the P&L. So if a business model is very decentralized, and that's a little bit the same at ISS today, when you are a service company, services are mainly local, how you do services. But if you're only local, a logical centralized IT is the opposite. So suddenly you need to talk, and that's why IT has to be on the strategic table. You need to talk about your operating model. A business can be physically local, so the forwarders, so the people in logistics, they're sitting for sure on the airports or wherever they need to be to operate, or in shared service centers. But you need to logically centralize the information to get scale and to get transparency. So that's why at Schenker, we really started under the lead of Jochen Teves to do a global strategy first. And there we defined how the future looks like. And the future looks for us was very clear. It's all about one of the dimensions is, you have to be tech savvy. You have to win the interplay between humans and machines. And you have to get automation as far as you can in a low margin business. So if you are aligned on the top level with the CEO and what IT can contribute, then you can start, even if you have a decentralized P&L, you can start to build a transnational tech organization. There are people which don't like that because it's kind of a lose of power. If you lose the control of your local infrastructure because it's run globally, everybody appreciates a global cybersecurity because that's only risk. You don't want to do that in country, so you want your mother doing that for you. But that's a contradiction. So in the end, a lot of things failed as well at Schenker because there was a central team trying to roll out a system to a country, and the country just didn't want to, or the local P&L, they couldn't absorb the costs in the P&L this year. And so you have already these fundamental conflicts which make it not work. And the second dimension, I think, why project historically failed is there was always the business and IT. And, that's the biggest, sorry to say, bullshit. There is no business and IT. There is IT and business. And it's one, there is no department in 2025, which you really properly can run without using tech. And that even goes down to cleaners these days, right? If a cleaner doesn't know when to be where, at what time, with which equipment, it's just not effective and the customer is unhappy. So I think historically there was this separation in departments, and it's them and us. And, some people treat IT as a slave, and others, are partnering. And the only solution I worked out over the 30 years in the 4 industries I worked in, it's about integrated teams, and it's giving the teams the responsibility to solve. And it's not business or IT, it's an integrated team with product owners and technicians, and give them the right steers and the right, bars where they can run it. And that made Schenker really transform, within 5 years to a quite significant tech-based forwarding business.
Hey, and I still see that I also introduced that still a lot of CEOs, they treat IT as plumbing and not really as profit weapons. But my question is a bit, why do some companies still not build this muscle? I mean, you just mentioned it. It's like IT and business, that's total different concepts in many boards. But I mean, in the end, it's when we talk about cost, until the agents are coming and solving all the problems for us for free, until then, it's still going to cost a lot. So what do you say about, like, let's say the topics insourcing, outsourcing, and this whole debate that it's in the end an investment, but you really need to step ahead and also be aware of the calculation in the end. So what do you advise in terms of cost?
Yeah, I would firstly, let me start with, it all depends on the owners of the company, right? If just giving you an example, as you know, I'm in the supervisory board of Wirth, and we had Reinhold Wirth, he became 90 this year. And there was a legendary board meeting where he stood up and said he just want to document here that for him, looking forward for this family business, which is a 20 billion euro family business, he said the most important thing we need to master in the years to come is tech. Sales is still important. That was always he's a sales guy. Is one of the best places to learn how you can sell. But he said I have to change my statements of the history. In the future, tech is gonna do that. Some of them, that was the reason why they pushed into the supervisory board somebody like me, who's an tech guy who runs tech every day. And we have even a tech committee on the supervisory board where the CIO and the board members are presenting, and we are coaching, helping them, and making sure tech is taken seriously. And I think that's where the problem starts. In a lot of companies, you have supervisory boards, then you have some people sitting there who might have tech, but maybe not. And then they need to guide the CEO. If the CEO is not living and breathing it by himself, then the supervisory board needs to ask the right questions to support, because that's the role of a supervisory board, to give advice to the leadership of a company, to have the right know-how in the management team to make sure the company will really last short, long, and midterm. And that's the issue. So I don't, blame any CEO, because if you're a CEO, you're either, a top sales guy, or you're a top financial guy, or you're a top strategist. But, being everything in one, and being technology savvy left, right, and center is just, an unhuman, right? That's why I'm always say it's a team play, but it has to still start with the CEO. So if the CEO thinks, and that's how I did my career, I always thought, where is my weakness? And then I recruited the best architects. That was because I didn't write millions of lines of codes in my life. So I wanted to have always the deepest tech guy close to me to understand, why do you think? And at Schenker, I took the baton when I arrived. I said to the board, look, we have no data analytics. We have no know-how how to do analytics. And that's in a logistics company. If okay, I will take that and do it. And then Jochen said, yes, Markus, you can do it, right? Go for it and make sure you don't get more budget, And I said, I don't need budget. I can save somewhere else and I can build it. And then we built the muscle over 5 years and had in the end 32 mathematicians, data scientists, analytic guys, and build algorithmics, prediction algorithms, pricing algorithmics. We had a proper, end of estimated time of arrival algorithmics, machine learning exercises. So I would say well prepared, but again, somebody has to take the lead in the board. That's why you're not alone, right? That's why you were a board and a management team. So, and I think if this has not arrived in the company, I just can say to all supervisory board members, just make sure that the company you're responsible for is preparing ready for that.
And this is a good next follow-up with, when tech is so important, like there is a need of a transformation playbook. And you are the creator of this 8-spoke transformation wheel. So like a repeatable playbook to turn this siloed IT landscape into growth engines. And it's like, I saw so many transformation projects in doing exactly that. So, and it's about cybersecurity, it's about compliance, agility. So the more agile a tech stack is today, like an architecture, or let's talk these buzzwords like microservices and having an API gateway and all these underlying tech stacks. But in the end, it's really tricky to make a step-by-step guide to really cover those spokes or those dimensions. And I mean, just to read out the spokes, I read about organization design, architecture, data as an asset, cost discipline, talent strategy, delivery model, ecosystem leverage, and last but not least, culture and leadership. Could you guide us quickly through this framework and maybe also point out how we would apply this and where we have to watch out that we don't have the feeling that we just can copy paste?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So the whole framework, we invented when we did the tech strategy at Schenker, because that's the first time I was a board member, and I can top down start to say, look, I'm so unhappy with the strategies I saw, because the strategies in tech I saw historically was more about we do what the business needs, and that's not good enough. So I just asked myself, I need to explain to my global tech team, how do we do tech? About the what only, it's about the how do you do tech. And how do you do tech pretty much depends on the positioning, as we discussed before. So if you want to be a leader in tech in your industry, that the question about how much insourcing versus outsourcing you want to do is completely different than when you say, I only want to run a low cost tech organization, because tech is not a differentiator in my business. So that exactly goes down into the question, how much standard software versus individual software do you do? How much coders do you want to have in-house or not? I'm still stunning because some companies still think they don't need to be able to write code. And honestly, really, in 2025, there is nothing ready out of the box. If you want to be a leader in your business, you will be always ahead of standard software. So you need to configure, you need to connect, you need to analyze the data, you need to build a data lake to really get the information available for your managers. So not understanding tech, not being able to code a little bit, it is just, how do you want to buy the right coders if you can't do something yourself? And for sure, one of the key skills you have to have is proper architecture. And I'm not talking about PowerPoint architecture. I talk about real architects who can code and advise the coders how to code and build these microservices ecosystem for you. So that's why the spokes of the wheel have to go through that. When it comes to organization question, an organization of a muscle in a company needs to develop over time in waves. And in a lot of my assignments, it was about a global decentralized business model. And now, Markus, make a global IT organization with global solid lines, with centralized cybersecurity, with scalable cloud operations. So organization, how much do you do central versus decentralized? Do you build competence? How much tech centers do you want to have? What do you do centrally? What do you do decentrally? A lot of questions you need to discuss and make your country CIOs able to implement, that they don't need to call you every day, Markus, what do I need to do here? No, he understands the strategy. He knows what he wants to do locally. And you will always have a legacy footprint of apps, and it's in every big global company, it's thousands of apps. It's not a few hundred, it's thousands. And it's a journey, but you need to then choose what makes a difference. And you need to show progress very quickly to the business. At ISS, we built a family of new apps and we hit the ground with customers immediately and have to be able to maintain big clients because of tech. And I think that's where it then starts, that tech is seen more than just being a department who does some tech stuff. And then you go around about one key dimension about global infrastructure and security services. How do you do that? And again, you need to make the team part of the strategy process. So it's everybody in the world who leads some kind of infrastructure was part of the journey to say, are we going for cloud first? Are we going in a hybrid cloud mode? Are we going for data center? What do we want to do? And you as a boss, you have to guide them. If you're not happy with where they go, you challenge them. But in the end, they own it. They own that they want to be cloud first. That's an example we had at ISS and in Schenker as well. So we went to the cloud because there was no other way for us to scale, reduce costs, and become more cyber secure. But then the team drives itself, and that's when the speed comes, because they own it. It's not because Markus said we need to do that. No, they worked it out, and the countries have been part of it. That's how you bridge from a very local culture into a global culture, because the culture of the global IT muscle has to come together. Otherwise, you fight battles in every single country. And then the very business close three dimension of the wheel are around the global application landscape. So what apps, how do they communicate? Because their apps are like a religion, right? Some people like Microsoft, others like SAP. You can debate forever what's better or not. But in the end, it doesn't really make the difference, because everybody can buy this software. So you need to really think about the ecosystem and what makes the difference, and where do you need to be just stable and deliver and repeatably deliver successful implementations, which is by itself, a difficult thing, because you need to change people's behaviors, the processes, you need to train people, and there's a permanent budget discussion. Oh, if I do it locally, it's going to be cheaper, which is never true. I can tell you out of 30 years. And then innovation and digitization, especially around how do you organize the implementation of AI in a company, right? People are talking about that, but nearly no company has a proper AI strategy. And we know that the speed of change now is exponential. So you need to think about how do you, again, logically centralized, but let people run out there, try out use cases, but under a steering, under guidance. Do you ever build a secure sandbox where they can play out their use cases, things like that? And then you need proper IT management processes. Because if you're a global company, you need to know if Australia does a project, yes or no. Do they have an approval, yes or no? But otherwise, you don't even understand that they are searching for a purchasing system, and you have already one. So that's why it's so important to holistically address the transformation journey and not say it's about SAP or Microsoft, or it's about cloud or non-cloud, or it's about AI or not AI. No, you need to address all the 8 dimensions to ultimately end up, which is in the center of the wheel, a stable, agile, and cyber secure IT operations and services platform for your business. And it's an engineering task, so it's not, there is a way to do it right, and then you just need to find the right people to make it happen, and that's possible. But it's a team play. It's never a department's role only. It's a team play with the board. It's a team play with the business units. But I tried it now, as you said, several times, and it really worked. And in the end, the companies are better off after that.
Hey, about the teamwork or the human factor, I have more questions. But first, about this winning playbook. And I mean, I love frameworks. I dove into it, and I really like the structure. And you're definitely saying like the technology or like the application, it doesn't come first. But when we give an advice, let's say to other CIOs, CTOs, or chief product officers out there, what is the slide or what stands on the slide, if you talk about PowerPoint, that usually flips a skeptical CEO? What would you advise? What is the key message that they can really earn the project and say, like, look, this is the transformation we have to do? What is convincing?
So for every project, in principle, what you need to start, and this is in the category around management processes, right? If you don't have a proper demand management and you don't know what is the demand, if it's not clear, what do you want to achieve? Every demand needs to have a business case, and a business case can be a regulatory compliance thing. Yeah, it doesn't mean dollars all the time. It can be something completely different. And I think if this is clear, the why do we do that as a company? And if then it's clear that we have, and that's another thing, right? That you then pull the best people on the project. If the people, but there's so many said that, there's always the same names and it's project number 25, he need to take care from the business side. It's fucking never works. It doesn't. And if you don't see that and you just don't have the courage to stop things, you just need to stop things which are not properly stuffed. And I think that's something where I learned, even from one of the professors in St. Gallen, that for every year you go through your portfolio and you just, systematische Müllabfuhr, just you stop things which are not really interesting. Because, either the business sponsor is not really on board, the value promised doesn't appear. You need to consequently stop things. And if you show to your board, did you take care about costs? There is no company who does not need to take care about costs. And in tech, I had permanently every year running a cost-cutting exercise because there's always something to harvest. Always. It's just because it's so complex. You can optimize sourcing, you can bundle things, you can switch off apps, you need your architects permanently to work on how to get rid of some apps. You need transparency on the IT costs, which is a big issue in a lot of companies because it's just not a proper IT controlling practice in a lot of CFO sites. You need to build that. We built that at Schenker, we built that at ISS, that we know what are we spending for tech. And then you can show business cases. And that's in the end the language the CEOs, the CFOs understand. And then it works. But it's fact-based, if fact-based. And what kind of people do you get to run it? If you don't, the worst projects, to be very honest, Mark, the worst projects are the projects IT wants to have. The project you want to do, these are the worst ones, because then the business just leaves you alone. After a year or so, you're alone. Or you have changes in the board. Suddenly the sales board member, resigns, but you did a big CRM program. And then you as a CIO, you're alone. There's nobody else in the board who supports you anymore. And the next guy is coming and say, oh, but that's not the right decision. Because it's a matter of taste. Some apps are a matter of taste, not a matter of facts.
Talking about this team part or the human factor, I mean, this wheel, as you said, only spins if the humans behind they really believe in the journey. And what I experienced is if this transformation comes into the company, then there is these people that jump forward and they say like, "Hey, that's a cool direction. That's the journey I want." And the other ones they maybe jump back and hold like the existing part which seems to disappear, and then you have a huge gap. So some people are running ahead and the other ones hold back. So how do you manage this communication that there is like that you don't fall behind and fall off the wagon?
I can only tell you how I did it, and I'm not saying this is the best way to do it. So what I did is when I was at Schenker and at ISS, I always said to my people, look, I'm standing up every day and go to work. And if I do that, I want to make a difference. That's me. That's just me as the one who's accountable for this function. And if I play football, I want to play Champions League. I just don't want to play third league. And over time, people understand that, okay, if I want to have an easy day and if I don't want stress, then maybe the IT function of Markus is maybe a too busy place. Yeah. And maybe I change. And that happens. You don't need to fire people because people suddenly feel not comfortable. And it's not that I push it down or I'm not a kind of top. No, it's the team dynamics who push themselves. It's not me telling them to run fast. It's their proposal. I think that's one of the key questions in leadership. If the teams don't own it and don't want to, if you need to carry a whole team, then you have the wrong product manager or the wrong product owner. But you can't top down, you can't carry a dog to the hunt. Either dog runs and wants to hunt or not. And I think what I learned, and with all the right sourcing I did, so I saved cost in consultant, I brought in, you bring in new people, you can change the complete culture of a function. We did that at Schenker. We saved money, reduced the external dependency, and with the new recruits, you bring new culture. At ISS, we recruited nearly 25% new headcount, replacing hundreds of external consultants who burn a lot of money every day. It's not their fault, by the way. It's how you steer them, right? So, and if you add new people, it changes the dynamics. I can agree with you, Mark. If you need to change it in a very solid, kind of concrete kind of culture of a company, it might be very difficult. But then they will not recruit me because if either a company is ready for change or it's not. That's something you need to find out. So you need to do before you start as well a transformation in AI. You need to do interviews, and we do that as a moment in a company, and we really ask to the top 25 people we did interviews and understand, are they ready to change? Do they want to change? And we played this culture back to the board of this company and say, hey, your people want to. They want to move. And I think that's something you have to have in your analysis. But it worked, and it worked. People want to be part of something cool. People want to make a difference. People want to learn, and everybody wants to play in a successful team and do cool stuff in tech. Absolutely. Never seen somebody who said, I don't want to, do this and see it going live. It's nothing cooler than when your app goes live and you see suddenly users using it and it's making money, and it's it's really cool.
Interesting. The last part of your transformation flywheel, decoding the chemistry, decoding the team flow, the culture. Interesting case. I would like to go more into like some hacks you learned over the time. So maybe as a last question, what is the surprising part that you still think like, hey, today it's always a blind spot and then these tech leaders still ignore it or don't know it? What is it?
I still think it's nearly in all areas of the wheel. There are blind spots which I think are really, really wrong. So one of the things is around data management. And everybody talks about it. Honestly, it's really not easy, but nobody, not a lot of, let's not nobody's maybe overdone, but in big companies, people don't know how to address it. Really don't know how to address it. And there is so many cool AI-based tools out there to build your own, to analyze the data, to find the semantics in the data. So it's not like you had to have people who compare now attributes and say, are they the same or not? AI can help you massively. So data management is far too much driven like a formal thing, and then I need a data steward and I need a data owner. Yes, you need, but in the end, let's start with some data, with a data lake, with mathematics, with analytics, and then confront with use cases your partners on the business side, and then data becomes something people are working with, because all the rest is just for the bookshelf. You just not used it. So that's, I think, a key thing. Sourcing is for me still, people are shifting things to India because it's a cheap daily rate, but if you are a Europe-based company, that's at ISS why we built a tech center in Warsaw and in Portugal, because it's the same time zone, it's very close cultures, Denmark, Germany, Switzerland, Warsaw. People understand each other. People think more the same way, and the value generation, it's not only the daily rate, so there's so much naivety, because on a board level it looks cool, right? I take 1,000 people out here and I put them to India and I save X. I never see that materializing. The third problem is people try to outsource problems. If you outsource a problem, it becomes bigger. It doesn't become smaller. So you should never, if you don't control your infrastructure, if you don't understand your infrastructure and you give it to somebody and he says, I'm going to fix it for you, you're going to bleed for 10 years or more, like these contracts are. I hardly saw any of my peers who said, I outsourced it and it's wonderful in infrastructure. It was the best thing I ever done. It's short-term driven a lot, and it's a lack of internal leadership in some of these functions like infrastructure to make it right. That was only 3 examples, but I think it's the same for myself. You can improve every day, and you're not perfect. But there are, and the last one, I would say, what I changed really since the Schenker time, I'm pretty a lot out with customers, with my people. I bring my people to the customers, that there are no layers in between you, the tech department, and what ultimately the user of the product. When we build a driver app for the truckers at Schenker, we put the young people on the truck with the truckers and made the designs with them, not another one in between and the business people tell you what you need. No, be in it as a team. And then they loved it, and we rolled it out to 3,500 truck drivers, and they loved the app and they used the app. And suddenly you had transparency on your trucks, when they arrive, how many stops they did and all this stuff. So the last point is really about be close to your ultimate customer. And at ISS, I was part of customer visits, customer bids with my team, and for the global key account, you need to be there as a CIO. You have to listen to the ultimate customer. Otherwise, there's a big risk that you're working on the wrong topics.
Hey, Markus Sontheimer, thanks a lot. I quickly summarize that we talked about the agility that companies need, and that it usually does not start with technology. So it's the business which comes first. This is why the 8th dimension, the wheel to steer any industry, was invented. And what I also took away is like not only the people management and the decoding, the culture. It's also about that if you run the IT projects which the IT department really likes, then you might have very expensive lines of code. So you need definitely a team behind it. But that's part of it. So if someone wants to dive deeper with, let's say, their IT infrastructure, how do they find you?
Yeah, normally they find me on LinkedIn and just send a message, and I'm happy to help.
Hey, Markus, thank you very much for sharing all your insights and your experience.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. It was a pleasure.